So thank you so much for being here. We are so excited.
I know how passionate you are about motherhood, so it is absolutely my honor to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have goosebumps. We were talking before we hit record, and like I have goosebumps everywhere. So I always take that as a sign of like validation and just soul connection, right?
The body knows. The body always
Yes,
knows.
it
Yeah.
totally does.
Yeah.
So, just I would love to hear where you're at right now today, what you're up to. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, I'm 38 years old and I am the proud mother of two daughters. My oldest just turned 17 and my youngest just turned 16.
Cool.
So we're getting to what feels like the end of motherhood, which is a pretty interesting phase to be in. You know,
Mm,
you're going along as best you can, and then all of a sudden you feel that moment where you start imagining
mm,
life after that direct motherhood, and it's
right.
it's turning into more of a mentorship now, which
Yeah.
I love. I've loved every stage, but I have to say, turning to a mentorship type of role and
Mm.
really letting them own their own lives, like I'm really excited to be in this phase of things.
That is so cool. I really
Yeah.
like that. I love the direct and indirect because I am definitely in the direct
Yeah.
motherhood
You're
right
in
now.
the like
Yeah.
physical in there all day,
Yeah.
every day. Yep. Me, it's all mental right now. There's no
Yeah.
physical. It's just
Yeah.
mental game.
Yeah, it's mom, 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 mama, mama. It's like, I hear you, my love. I hear
Yes.
you. So yeah, so I love that. And happy birthing day, I guess, because
Oh,
I did see your post and I read it and I got a lot of
yeah.
tears in my eyes for your oldest
Yeah.
daughter. So I can imagine that has been such a beautiful, intense, rewarding journey for you for sure.
It's a sigh of relief when you're like, oh, hey, they're good humans. Like,
Right?
I did this. I did it okay. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for being here. So I would love
Mhm.
to hear from you. What does redefining motherhood mean for you? And how have you kind of, if you were to describe
Yeah.
your journey, how have you redefined motherhood?
That that's a really good question. And truly, it's only been in this last year that I've really connected to being a mother. I
Hmm,
really did not give myself permission, and there's often times in my life where I've been like, I'm a mom. I'm a
hmm,
mom.
hmm,
That's weird. When is that going to not be weird?
hmm.
And it's taken me a long time to figure out why that's been. And you go into those shadow parts of yourself, and but it's been really obvious to me that I just haven't given myself permission to connect
Hmm.
with that role. And that really came from having both of my daughters at being 22 and having two kids under the age of one.
Right.
And I don't know. I just never felt like I was worth it, or it was a valid form of motherhood, because it wasn't by choice, and it wasn't
Right.
in a loving marriage, and it was in a
Hmm.
time of like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this?
Right.
So it's really been in this last year.
Hmm.
And I just think I have a very interesting, powerful story. And we were talking before, I've been working on opening my throat chakra, and I'm ready to share it. I'm ready to
Hmm.
share just what our
Yes.
journey's been. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
with that, why don't
Yeah.
you tell us about your journey? And I also I want to say I'm just so honored because
Mhm.
it's a big deal. And I think this is exactly why these conversations need to happen so that we can create that community of
Mhm.
safety and to stop having that fluff, like what you had just mentioned, right? Like these ideas of what motherhood needs to look like or should look like. And if we don't have that, then what does that mean? Right?
And there's so many different types of mothers, and they're
Yes.
all valid, and they're all worthy, and they're all important, and they're all special. So yeah, I'll start by saying that I was that girl that was in school that I had been dating someone in the summertime, and very obviously he was not the person for me. He
Hmm.
was very jealous, very just aggressive behavior, and I ended things and I
Mm-hmm.
went back to school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was that girl that was visiting my parents on Thanksgiving weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and I went out to the bar and I was completely blackout drunk, and I ended up going home with the person that I had broken up with that summer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was that. I went back to school and I started feeling really sick, and I started fainting, and I'm like, that's bizarre. I've never
Mm-hmm.
fainted before in my life. And I went to the hospital, and I was explaining things that were happening to me, and they were testing me out, and they're like, no, we can't find anything. I was like, okay. And for some reason out of my mouth, it just popped out like, okay, and I'm not pregnant. And they said, oh, we never checked for that.
Oh.
And they checked, and yes,
You-
I was pregnant.
Yes.
And it was not even a thought. It wasn't I'm very pro-choice. I'm very, whatever decision is right for you,
Right.
I lovingly accept. But for some reason, for me, for that child, for my Jade, it was just like, okay, I'm having this baby.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard for my parents to accept. I had 2 younger sisters at home, and I think this is where a big part of that break started happening with my motherhood, because
Right.
my parents asked me to keep it a secret and not tell
Mm.
anyone.
Mm.
So here I was, 20, pregnant, knowing that the person that I was having a baby with wasn't my match, not able to talk about it with my family. I was away from home, and did not have a very loving, open relationship with my parents. It's very much their
Right.
pattern, and we all try the best that we can, but their
Yeah.
pattern was, something's uncomfortable, let's avoid it.
Right.
What will my grandmother think? What will the
Mm.
church think? What will our friends think? What will your sisters think? So I was really just being consumed by how everybody else was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, my body, I didn't even show until I was 7 months. And now when I look back
Mm.
at it, I'm convinced that my body wasn't even allowing myself to process that I was pregnant. It was like I was
Right.
holding so much in.
Right.
And I ended up connecting with the person that is both of my daughter's father,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him, I was pregnant, and he was like, great, let me be with you, let me be in your life, I'm going to take
Mm.
care of you. And at the time, like, that was like my one little beacon of light, so I
Yep.
held on to that.
Right.
And I moved back to where he was, and I wanted a family. I thought, great, like, if this can work, if we can work through this, if I can help him work through the challenges that he's having,
Right.
amazing. What a beautiful story. I'm like the optimist, right? Okay, let's have a beautiful story out of this. So pregnant with my daughter Jade, very weird time. Things started getting progressively worse with him.
Mm.
With all the love in my heart, it was a very stressful time. He was also in his mid-20s. So I have compassion for that. But stuff started really unraveling, and I didn't really have any place to go. I didn't feel safe to go to my parents. I kind of held that all in, but yet still excited for the pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
and for the birth. And I had my daughter, and it's so bizarre, but the moment I held her, I looked down at her and I
Mm-hmm.
said, I am doing this again immediately.
Wow.
And
Wow.
when I look back at that, I know that's God. That was like the divine, because when I see my daughter Haley and I know
Mm.
that choice that I made, like, that was beyond me. That was
Right.
something else, because
Right.
there is no reason in the world that I would have logically said, I am doing this right again. And you know what? I did. And
Right.
3 months later, I was pregnant again, and my daughters are a year apart. And when I look
Right.
at Haley now, I'm like, yes, you were a choice, but you were given to me. You were told for me, me to have. And
Mm.
it was really during that pregnancy that stuff really started to get really hard at home.
Mm-hmm.
And emotionally, physically, mentally, I completely shut down.
Right.
I was living, but I was not alive.
Right.
And there was something that I would do at the time, and I like think back to this poor soul me, but it's something that I've done since a very young child when I had challenges in my family. But I would crawl up onto the on the sink and put my face really close to the mirror. So this is me doing this when I'm, the mother of two, and I would look myself in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and I would honestly ask myself to give up.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, give up. There's no hope. This is a terrible situation. You have no way out.
Mm-hmm.
Stop thinking you deserve more. I would beg myself to not deserve I deserved anything and to just give up. And
Mm-hmm.
every time I did that, I would always see this like sparkle in my eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was my future self. I don't know if that was just my soul, but there was always something still there.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that sparkle, I couldn't give up. I had to believe that I deserved more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
it got to the point where, I was going home. I remember Christmas where I was home and I was surrounded by my family, and I was there with like a clearly busted up lip, and had obviously been physically hurt, and no one would speak up. My parents wouldn't ask anything. My father wouldn't ask anything. And it just started to break me.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where it was just too unsafe for me to have my children there.
Right.
And so I went to a women's shelter. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's a
Good
lot.
for me.
That's a
It was
lot.
a lot. It was a lot. And I'm getting chills right now thinking of it, because they tell you that whenever you make a big decision like that,
Mm-hmm.
the universe will test you. And when I
Yes.
say the universe tests me, oh my goodness. So I show up, I'm at this women's shelter. I have a newborn, a 1-year-old, and my 1-year-old starts with this flu, this stomach bug that she was vomiting every 10 minutes.
Wow.
She got to the point where she was so sick that I had to hospitalize her. And then I was in the hospital with her. And I was just like, can I do this? Like, I came this far. Like, why is this happening? And I got so scared and just like really doubted myself and kept thinking like, is this the right choice?
Mm-hmm.
I stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And, the women's shelter was really hard for me. I had decided to put myself back in school right before I ended up leaving.
Okay.
And I was going to school and I had the kids and I was in the women's shelter. Oh, I'll also mention not only the stomach flu, but my room was haunted. It was definitely haunted. There was
no. Come on.
And there was, it was really hard for me in the women's shelter because they were like, well, why aren't you here doing this? And why weren't you here today? And why aren't you, in the group meeting? And why aren't you doing this? And I was like, well, I'm in school full time. And then I'm like trying to look for a job and I have to pick up the kids. And it was really hard for me. So, I really felt unsupported in that environment, and yet still at the same time really grateful that I had somewhere to go and that got me into a safe environment. So really grateful, but again, still going like, am I not loved? Am I not supported? Where?
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I went into low-income housing, and I was with my girls, and I was going to school full-time and working full-time. And, I've had conversations with my daughters later on, and they were like, and it blew my mind when they said this, but they were like, Mommy, sometimes I didn't even know that I lived with you when I was little. But that's because I would get up so early in the morning and it was still dark and they would be asleep, and I'd have both of them in my arms, bringing them to the sitter so that I could go to school all day. And then they would go, get either daycare or a sitter or something. And then I would work the 3 to 11 shift, and then I would come and pick them up and they were still asleep. And so whenever they said that to me, I was like, no, you always lived with me. You always lived with me.
Always.
Yeah, always. And then I loved that we had that conversation, because then I was really able to explain, like, this is what Mommy was doing. Like, this is why you don't remember, because you were you were probably sleeping every time that you were coming in and out of our house. So also during that time, out of my control, their father ended up doing something that got him charged by the police.
Okay.
And I had to go in and give statements and testimonies. And I remember they wanted to record a video of you.
Okay.
Because the trials take so long to go through. Whenever there's a witness or someone doing a testimony, you're able to look back at it so that you can remember your testimony and then provide one.
Right.
So I remember recording that video, and a year later when I went back in because the trial was about to happen, and I looked at that video of myself. And this is something that I've recently gone back in and worked with, because the woman that I saw in that video has haunted me for 16 years.
Right.
And I was never able to ever see who I was along the way.
Right.
Because to me, the only woman I saw was that woman in the video. And I told myself and I convinced myself that I was broken because that's how I saw that woman.
Right.
And that was one of the big reasons. And, that I never felt or gave myself permission to really embrace the motherhood or think that I was worthy or valid and blessing. But on that day that I was supposed to go to court and give my testimony, he ended up pleading guilty, and I didn't have to go at all. So he gave me that gift, and it was just really hard on me. Yeah. So that was a great gift that he had given me. And what plagued me after, what I was not prepared for, was after I was there, I was safe, I was working, I was in school, I was going to make something of my life. I woke up one morning and PTSD, I could not move, not physically move from my bed. It was like someone had put 10,000 pounds on top of me.
Right.
And I felt so betrayed because I'm like, how?
Right.
How? After all this?
Yeah.
I was not prepared. And there were days where the only thing I could do was to pull the babies in the bed and just have them be with me in that bed all day long. All day. It was the only thing I could do. And, time went on. I got therapy. I was moving forward. Yeah, I know I'm talking a lot. So if you have questions.
No, my goodness. I'm just curious. I have a question.
Yeah.
I think that, no, first of all, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I have been quiet because, I think you sharing your story has so many gifts to it. I think there's a lot of healing in it for sure. Yeah. And also I am emotional, so I'm managing myself, because I have been on the other side, guiding and helping moms and advocating for moms, and for many years before moving into my private practice. And I kind of like when people tell stories, I visualize things, and I remember helping moms who went into shelters and then went into into the transition home. Right. And I know the grit it takes to do the work. And my question is, from moving into the transitional home to going back to school and doing how long did you do that for?
Well, I went back and I took nursing. So it actually, once I graduated from nursing and I got a job immediately, so I was very lucky that way. It wasn't very long before I was able to transition into my own home.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so from that time, because you said you were working, you were school and then working, and then you woke up one day and it was that was it. You're resting. Basically, you were done. You were in bed. How long did you go for that? How long did that go for?
Ooh, okay. Well,
before you got to bed.
Yeah.
How long did you how long was your program?
Pardon? Which program?
Your school. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 4 years.
4 years.
4 years. And then I got accepted into a program to do, because I wanted to work in the OR. I was very passionate about working in the OR. So
Cool.
I ended up doing an internship and placement at the General Hospital in Ottawa
Cool.
to do in the OR. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
But the PTSD was happening all throughout that
Oh,
time.
totally. And
Yeah.
so at what point did you get therapy while you were in school?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
What do you remember the moment where you realized where you were like, okay, this is a lot and I need guidance, I need help, I need support. At what point do you remember specifically what that looked like for you and how you knew it was time to ask for help? Because I will pre-frame a little.
Mhm.
When I have these conversations on the show, it's every mama comes back and says like to ask for help, to ask
Yeah.
for help. And our stories are all very different and yet all very similar,
Mhm.
and unique in their own ways. And most of the moms come back and say it would have been to ask for help. So how
Wow.
did you know that it was time to ask for help?
Yeah, no, if I could go back, I would have asked for that's the number. I would have asked for way more help, because the way that I didn't really allow myself, but what had happened is we had some things transpire whenever we were together,
Mm-hmm.
and that had me seeking out counseling so that we could do the counseling together. I
Mm-hmm.
really was trying everything that I could do to help him and to move through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the ways that I did it. So I was lucky that I had that woman who took me on after
Wow.
I had left.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
because I don't think that I don't know, you can't go back, but I don't know if I would have myself gone to get help.
Mm.
To me, help didn't seem available. To me, when my parents didn't seem to be able to cope or really see what was happening,
Yeah.
to me that meant, okay, if the people who are supposed to love me the most in the world
Yeah.
can't deal with this,
Right.
whoever could.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Did your parents, I mean, have your parents come around? At what point did they say, yeah, like we see you, you've got two beautiful
Yeah.
girls, did things ever shift or transition there?
No, nope.
No.
My parents are still the people that they are, and
Okay.
I love them. I love them. But for them, they're just facing something that's unpleasant isn't comfortable for them. And I
Gotcha.
have to accept that.
Right.
And what I do know about my parents is they have been the best grandparents,
Okay.
the best loving grandparents. And that is what has really, for me, like that's the
Hmm.
greatest gift in the world. And that
Cool.
is really what I focus on, is their relationship with them.
Cool.
And yeah, I still see them, and there's no animosity, but there's not open communication. There's
Got
not
it.
that support in that way. Yeah.
Right. And wouldn't you say that that's also that generational, like when I think about redefining motherhood, for me, it's
Yeah.
all of what you have shared too. And also that generational way of doing things, because I do believe our parents did everything that they could to
Yes.
the best of their ability.
Mhm.
I wonder sometimes if like the generations before them, it's almost like, yeah, we don't talk about things because that could make it worse. So
Right.
we're going to keep everything as it is because we can survive this.
Right.
Whereas our generation, and I think
Yeah.
the beautiful generation of children we're bringing in
Yes,
or have
for
brought
sure.
in, because we both
Mhm.
have children on this earth right now. Um,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's this shifting of ideologies and philosophy that emotions are our best gift, and they have been so confusing for so many
Yeah.
centuries, and it is time to dive into what emotions are. Because and I'm going to go a little bit off topic, but
Mhm.
we're in a global pandemic, right? and
Mhm.
and it's this interesting perspective of like there's fear everywhere. Not to say that there wasn't fear before,
Right.
but you can genuinely look around and go, everyone's feeling some kind of uncertainty here. And
Mhm.
I look at it and I go, there is this intensity of we've got to understand emotions to get through this.
Yeah.
There's this level of we've got to do things differently on so many different ways. And I wonder, yeah, like I always think my daughter's calling me forward to do that deep work because she needs it. Like she's going to need it because we're evolving and the world needs them to be different. The world needs them to be in tune with themselves. And yeah, I just think that redefining motherhood is that element of our polarity of our darkness and our light. Like, what is it that we needed to endure in order to give that gift to our children? Because I think they picked us for a reason. I mean,
Definitely. Yes,
you
yes,
said it
I
earlier.
know.
You're like,
No,
yeah, as
I
soon as I
love
held her, I was like,
yeah.
you're going to get it. Haley's coming.
Haley's coming. There's no choice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that you brought the conversation this way. Like I think this is so important because I know that what I was doing is I really assigned emotions good or bad. And
Right.
anytime I felt an emotion that I thought was bad, quote
Yeah.
unquote bad, I
Mhm.
shamed myself. I shut
Mhm.
it down. I really got really hard. For a lot of
Mhm.
years, honestly, what got me through was diving into my masculine.
I was just going to say, it was your masculine
Oh
energy.
my gosh. My
100%.
masculine took over and I was
Yes.
like, you know what? I'm going to be strong. Nothing's going to hurt me. I'm
Nope.
going to do this. I'm going to power through.
I've got 2 girls that need me. I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was doing. Any bad emotion, shut it down, turn into
Yes.
a good emotion. And
Right.
it's really been in the last few years where I'm
Mm.
like, that is not working. That is not serving me. And I'm
Yes.
so blessed to be around a community and people that really champion diving into this. Feel your feelings. You feel
Yes.
terrible? Sit with it.
Yes.
I'm a Reiki practitioner.
I was
And
just going to
when I was,
say.
yeah, when I was doing my training, I was, yes, I meditate and I have a great meditation practice. And she said, okay, when do you ever meditate in silence? I was like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, no.
No, I don't do that.
Yeah, I don't do that. And
Yeah.
now I know why, because if you lay there and you meditate in silence,
You feel the feelings.
you feel your feelings. It's going to come
Mhm.
up.
Yeah.
And there are moments when I dive into those shadows and I ask, like, why is that there? Where is
Mhm.
this coming from? And it is so painful. And I'm like crying. I'm like, I know why people don't do this. Because
Yes.
right when you break through that moment,
Right.
that is where the real growth happens. That is where you
Totally.
feel that release in your body. And I'm like, you can't stop at that moment where it's too much. And there's oftentimes, I had this great visual when I was in a breathwork class where
Mm.
there's been times where I've really felt that I was in a hole. And I'm like, oh, I'm in a hole. I'm in a spiritual hole, this feeling that I have. And what the visual that I had was, I was not at the hole. I was not in a hole. I was at the steepest part of the mountain right before the peak.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that is, I think, where people stop because they think they're in a hole, but you are not. I was right at the peak and all I needed was just to lift myself, just
Yes.
get through that,
Yes.
this
Yes.
is so hard moment.
Yes.
And that's when you get to the peak. And there's always a new mountain to climb and there's a new layer to face, but you gain this confidence that okay, I can gain this.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's been really baby steps to get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. The song that comes in my head, because I'm super auditory and music is my thing. The song that comes to my head is "You're always gonna have enough." It's that climb, Miley Cyrus. I'm like, oh my God, yes. I know she's fabulous. That song is so old, but that's the song that there's always gonna be an uphill battle. It's always gonna make you move. And then you just get that visual is everything for me. And so, but here's the thing, because you heard the term spiritual bypassing, right?
Yep.
And I think not a lot of people, maybe our listeners haven't heard it. So what does spiritual bypassing mean to you? And then I'll go where I was going to go.
For me, I take it as you are just completely eliminating it from your life or ignoring that it's there in order to push through and not feel the feeling.
Yeah. And just put love and light to it and just go. Right. And I think
Yeah.
we're in this transition right now in our world where it's that can't be what we do anymore. There's no more bypassing. And so you describe it so beautifully in the sense of you were doing first of all, you were doing a breathwork session. So we know you've got the tools. We know that you've got the framework for, cause I want to really just open this part up because I'm just thinking of a mom who maybe is just starting out this journey of discovering herself. Yeah. How did you did therapy, right? Right. You have your Reiki, what is it called? Certification, right? Practitioner. And so at what point did you go, okay, it feels safe? How did you know you were safe? Because feeling the feelings is I'm right there with you. I've got a mastermind. We talk every day. It's like, you got to feel the feelings. But I feel that I have the framework, I have the tools, and I have the
Mhm.
support system, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I just bulldoze through life and really wanting to protect the kids from anything that was challenging that was happening.
Mm,
So I was really just kind of like getting through.
yes.
And I ended up in this moving to Toronto. I have a very long story, but I had moved to California with the both of the girls because
Cool.
I had been given this gift of solo parenting and having full custody. I was able to do
Right.
what I wanted in freedom.
Right.
So I had ended up wanting a completely different thing, and the kids and I had moved to California.
How old were they?
Oh, they were really little at the time, like 6 or 7,
Oh my
8,
God.
9. Yeah,
So
around
cool.
that age.
Yeah.
And, but I really wanted to come back home to Canada. I was really
Hmm.
missing it. So I flipped a coin between Vancouver and Toronto won.
Wow.
So the girls and I moved to Toronto. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have
Wow.
any friends, any family here. It was the three of us. So we were starting on this new journey.
Wow.
And I just landed in this job and community where that's what the people around me were doing.
Mm,
And I started getting making really career accomplishments that I was really proud of,
mm,
but I've really started feeling stuck on the leadership part of it.
mm.
And I really wanted to be a leader.
Cool.
And I would cry and I'd be like, I don't know how am I going to be a leader? What do I have to do? I don't know if I'll ever be ready. And then I put it out there that I wanted to be a leader and to start having the steps that I needed to take in order to get there. So
Mm.
every little thing has just been a layered on. It's just been like
Yes.
little piece by little piece. And
Yes.
for me, it was the throat chakra. I was completely blocked. I
Mm,
could not say my true feelings. I wanted to make people feel good. I wanted to look strong. I held my story in. I would never admit to someone that I was abused. I would never admit to someone that I was in
mm.
low income housing. I would never admit I wanted to make my life seem perfect.
Right.
And layer by layer, and I started learning about high performance and leadership and how part of leading is challenging people and telling your story and opening up. So that just kind of kept
Happening.
yeah, I
Yeah.
just kept making the steps, and then it all unfolds, and I started listening to the little clues that were coming to me because I was having a conversation with someone about like, what's a moment in your life that you felt joy?
Mm,
And I got back to a moment where when I was nursing, and I did not like it. I was not in the business of keeping people sick, and yet I loved healing people. I loved being
interesting.
around people that I could
Interesting.
help. Yeah. And then
Wow.
a senior nurse came to me and she took me aside and she said, "Do you know that you have really healing hands?" I was like, "Really? Me?" She's like, "Yes. And that is a gift, and never forget it. There is so much more that you can bring to healing someone, and it's through your hands." So I was telling this person that story because the conversation about joy. And he said, shout out to Vince. Thank you, Vince, because you changed my life. He said, have you ever heard of Reiki? Like,
Wow.
no.
Wow.
He explained to me what it was and that, the healing isn't coming from you, but it's coming through you,
True.
and it's very intuitive and with your hands. And he told me all about it. I found his practitioner, his teacher, his master who taught him, and she was in perfect alignment with me. And it's
Wow.
just that. And then her with the, have you ever meditated in silence, and then opening up that, and then getting into the shadow work, and
Wow.
then the inner child work, and
Yes,
then
yes.
the inner
Yes, yes.
child.
The inner
Oh,
child comes through again. Yes.
the
I,
inner child. If you haven't heard what that is, please look it up,
yes,
because
yes.
it is a way to go back and love yourself through the moments that you needed
Mm,
it
the
most.
most.
The
Yeah.
most. And
Yeah.
it's so time is not linear to me. It is happening all at once, and you
Totally.
have permission to go back into those moments and hug yourself and tell yourself the things that you needed to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did through Reiki is I went back to that moment where I saw that woman in the video, that woman that I said was broken, that woman that's haunted me, that woman that's never let me see my accomplishments. I went back to that moment and I loved her so much. And I went into her, like into that space, and I hugged her and I loved her and I told her where we are now.
Yes.
And now when I look back at that woman, when I look back on that memory, she's waving to me. She's like thumbs up. She's like, we did it.
We did it.
Yeah.
She's like, you see me so differently. And it's so interesting that you share that. Next time I'm going to put Kleenex like right beside me. And these are tears of joy, right?
That's
like
gratitude, joy,
joy, just like alignment. And yeah, like when you were describing the girl in the video, I feel like I definitely wasn't doing your inner child work for you, but I was going and standing beside her and giving her love and sending love to her because, you said he gave you a really big gift. And I saw that moment as you got what you needed in that moment. And the gift was the gift from yourself. And she's like, you guys set yourself free in that moment. And yes, he was that part that played a part and that brought you to that part. But you healed that and you allowed yourself to receive that gift. That's powerful.
It's so powerful. And the most beautiful thing that relates to motherhood with my story is that as I started going through it, I just decided to open that up to the kids, to the girls, and let them know. And let them know when something wasn't making me feel good. Right. And coming back and redoing stuff that I was doing in parenting and letting them in on the work that I was doing and how I was, the stuff that I wish I would have done or that I was doing now. And I let them in on the journey and I let them really see the human side of me because we all are just doing our best. And there's no mother out there who just knows it.
Nope.
We don't.
Or else we wouldn't be doing it, right? Like I've been working this idea around the shadow side of motherhood, because I wonder if we kind of quantified it as that, if there would be a little bit more freedom or flexibility to it. It's like there, with anything that we're growing through, there is this need for the shadow work. And you've mentioned that many times through your story, right? The shadow parts of ourselves. And as you described that peak of the mountain, it's like, it's this choice to go, I'm not willing to see myself in the whole. I'm willing to see myself growing. And because I'm doing that, I am supported and I am safe and I'm worthy of this. I call it the turbulence, right when the rocket ship is like leaving the earth, that turbulence part. But that's the difference, I think, between our generation. It's like when we get to that part, we don't have to do it alone anymore. And that's the part where through these conversations, this is why I kind of expose that a bit.
I love that you do this. I love this. Yes.
It's through these conversations where I really want other moms to hear. It's like, we're not doing this alone. Like we didn't get to this other side or go through this. It's like these parts where we go, oh my gosh, I'm actually at the top of the mountain. I'm not at the bottom of the hill. It's because we chose, like you said, leadership. I chose healing. I asked, like I wrote it down. You asked for something and then you listened. You literally said this in the story. You said, I asked and then I listened. And then you just kind of kept taking those action steps. And I think it's like, those are those beautiful pieces where it's not like one day you were like, yeah, like things were tough, but here I am now. It's like, no, the journey, which is still happening.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. Because we're still doing the work.
No, it's not. It doesn't end. Like this is forever. And I love that you're doing this because what a story that I heard that was so powerful to me was the Lisa Nichols. When I heard Lisa Nichols, it hit me so, it resonated. I felt it in my body.
Yes. Yeah.
And when I heard her story, it impacted me in such a way that lately I've just been like, what if my story?
Yes.
What if me too could share this and someone else could hear it, but her story for me. And we've had her at our events before and they're a really crazy time and they're really, really busy. And I gave myself permission to go when she was on stage, and I was literally on my knees, tears streaming down my face,
Yeah, me too.
just so full of gratitude for
Yes.
for
Yes.
that woman to be so passionate and on that stage and so brave and
Mm-hmm.
so bold.
Mm-hmm.
That for me was that was rocket fuel.
Yeah. Oh my
That was
goodness.
rocket fuel
Yes.
for me. Yeah.
So when you talk about the event, you're talking about 2019, just the one that just happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Because me too. I
Yeah.
have literally integrated yes into
Mm.
everything that I do because of her. And she came in and she had that chat with Avalon in the room, and I was also bawling.
Yeah.
Because as a coach and as a practitioner and just really like wanting to heal the world really is what we're both, I feel like, trying to do.
Yep.
It's always like, okay, so what's the big goal and what's the big dream and where are you going and what are you doing, and very masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing her story, connecting at a heart level, and someone in the room asked a question like, how did you know that that's what you were going to do? And she's like, I didn't. I just knew that I wasn't going to have my son grow up in this neighborhood, and that was the only thing I focused on. And then after I achieved that, I focused on the next one thing. And I can't tell you how many times I come back to that. I
Yeah.
can't, like, I just come back to, I was just focused on the one thing,
She did, like, yeah.
right? I was
And
just
then,
focused on that. And it just kept growing and evolving from there.
yeah, and and I believe that she kept listening and she kept looking.
Yes.
And something that I really love is sometimes our imagination and our dreams, like, we reach the edge of them, and then we need to really go in and
Mm,
expand. You need to
mm,
expand those dreams. And I think that's what happened to me when I really got to the leadership point. I think I could only see myself growing so far, and what I
right.
had to start doing was imagining an even bigger dream or an even
Mm,
bigger goal for myself. So
right.
yeah, Lisa Nichols.
The
And
possibilities. It's like the
all the
possibilities,
possibilities.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think like I really want it to be felt that this hasn't been easy for
No.
you.
No.
And to go from feeling like you had no support, to meeting yourself back in those days and to heal yourself from the inside. Um, what what are some of the habits or the, I don't really like that word as
Yeah.
a feminine woman, but what are some of the practices that you engage in to really keep yourself in alignment with where you're growing to now?
That's a good one. Right now, especially with parenting teenagers, a big goal of mine is to always keep the lines of communication open.
Right, right.
Always. And
Hmm.
and that was a big part of me opening up that throat chakra and speaking my truth, because how
Yes.
could I ever expect my children to speak to me and be
And
open with me and come to me if I wasn't able to do that with them? So I said,
yeah.
I'll start.
Yeah. So you modeled to them some of the most difficult times in your life,
Yeah.
showed yourself and said, like, no matter what it is, like, you were always loved and I'm here for you. A message
Hmm.
that was not seen or felt in
Yep.
the way that you needed it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure your parents did it their way.
Yep.
Um, and then to be able to model, like, this is how we do living. It's not just here's the box and you have to,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to me is everything of like what you had said at the beginning, is that mentorship, like being that guide for them and paving the way for them to do it that way, to do it imperfectly.
Yeah. And I truly believe, and I've seen it with my own girls and my own family, that every time I heal something within myself,
Yeah.
I see it directly reflected in them, almost to the day.
Yes, yes,
Like,
yes, yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes. I could, oh my God, yes.
Like, I would do something to I would speak my truth. I would open up, and then couple hours later, Jade would come into my office and like sit down and just like drop the tea and tell me all the things that I'm like trying not to smile too big, because I'm like, I don't want her to see how happy I am that she's
Yes.
telling me everything, but directly. So my goal is always, okay, how can I improve? How can I heal? And then how can
Mm,
I pass or share
mhm.
my gifts or my learning experience with them, but at the same time, honoring their choice to do it as well.
Yes, that's got to be a beautiful harmony of letting them be themselves and also not wanting to like crush who they are, and also kind of going, it's okay, I got you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I found this really cool. This thing really helped me with healing. And if you ever want to learn about it, I'll teach you, or I'll find someone to teach you too.
Right.
So that's been a really big one. Communication, I think, is really key. And I think we're very afraid of open, transparent communication.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids can tell me anything. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. There's no TMI. It doesn't matter. There's no more judgment.
Mm.
It's a lot of just asking, how do you feel? How does that make you feel? And
Mm.
that's my alignment for me. For me,
Totally.
alignment is coming with compassion and asking
Yes.
questions, asking good questions, sometimes shifting their mindset and seeing like, hey, if we looked at it from this perspective, I'll do that when I see that it's right. But the more that I open up with them, the more that they open up with me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the most beautiful things that's happened over the past 17 years is that, I've held on to this resentment and this
Mm.
feeling of really being hurt by their father,
Yeah.
and not being vocal with the girls about it. It hasn't been well, your dad did this and your dad did that, but that was still inside me.
Totally.
And I know that they felt that. I know that our children feel what we're feeling.
They do. Yeah.
And I really held that for a long time, and I believed that I would never be able to let it go. I never, ever, if someone would have said, you are going to forgive him one day, I would have said, there's no
No
way.
way. No way.
There is no way.
Yeah.
But as time started going forward, and I started healing myself, I something happened where he had, every once in a while he'll like find me on a social media platform and like send me a message, and he sent me a message, and I did not have the physical reaction in my body that I
Right.
normally do.
Like that emotional charge. Like
Yeah,
it just
that like,
didn't.
oh, that like in your gut, like, oh, this
Yes.
doesn't, I don't know,
Mhm.
unsafe. No, I don't like this. No,
Right.
how dare you? No, why
Yeah.
could you think? I didn't have that feeling.
Wow.
And I kept checking on it because I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, is this
Is it there?
real? Like, no way I don't feel this." And I kept checking. And then finally one day I opened up to the girls and I said, "You know what? I want you to know that I forgive your father." They were like, "Really, mommy?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so that really opened up a whole new conversation with me and with them, and me being able to genuinely bring him up without that like emotion in the back of it, or that
Yeah.
feeling that might make them protect me from what they really wanted to
Right.
say or ask or know about him.
Right.
So it really started opening up the conversation, and I was just allow a space for him in our life. And it doesn't
Mm.
mean a physical space, he's not here, but an emotional space for
Yes.
him to exist
Wow.
in our life. And I now give them permission to build their own relationship with him that they want. This is up
Right.
to them.
Right.
Whatever transpired between me and him is now
Right.
gone. It's now forgotten. It's transmuted into love and forgiveness. So now it's up to them. And it was a couple months ago where they said, you know what, we're going to be near where he lives, and we want to go and we want to see him. We're going to see him. And I'm like, that's great. You should do that. And so they came back from the weekend. And the next day I got this message from him, and it was this really big, long message.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about gratitude and thanking me for raising the children that he at the time was just not able, he was not capable to do.
Yeah.
And he told me all of these beautiful things that he saw in the girls, and he thanked me for those things because he knows that I raised them with such like love, and I did everything that I could. And it almost like my whole 17 years had just like kind of all unraveled and unfolded, and I saw it all happen, and it just led to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That moment for me was everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what you come from, there is beauty at the end of it. Keep working. There's beauty. Okay, the journey has been hard, but it has been
Yeah.
full of laughter and light.
Yes.
My kids are hilarious. We've had like a great time. But that moment and being able to absorb it and not be
Yeah.
like, how dare he send me this? Like, he
Right.
didn't do that. Like, I really took it in, and it was really beautiful. And that was one of the most significant moments in my life, was getting that message. And yeah.
Absolutely. And not so much about him, but as a validation of the level of healing that you have done and given yourself, which I will say that level of healing and doing the work is exactly what it brought that in. It was like, that's,
Yeah.
I can't, it's hard for me to explain, because it's like at some moment we stop doing things in spite of people, and we start doing things because of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's like, when we resist that, it's almost like we surrender. And then that's when those beautiful messages come in. It's like, that's when you flip the coin and you chose Toronto. And that's when you asked, and then someone's like, you've got healing hands. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Maybe I do. Let me explore this more.
Right.
And just putting those practices in place to really take care of yourself, because self-care isn't, a bath and some wine and chocolate. Self-care is going into the darkness and knowing we are worthy and deserving of discovering that darkness. And it doesn't define us. It just creates, and it is an example of our light inside. And I think more of us need that in our life. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart and my soul for sharing that, because, in some way he has also done his own work too. I mean,
okay, we are all connected. We are all connected. And I in that moment, I saw the healing in him as well, because I didn't feel any of that emotion that I had felt from him before in that message. It felt completely genuine.
Yeah.
And I think that a big part of when I let go and I released, because I believe we're all connected, I think it released something in him too.
100% agree to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do, I do a session called the quantum change process, and it's all rooted in forgiveness. And I always say to the clients, it's never about letting that person off the hook. Never. It's about releasing the attachment and the energy that we potentially can pour into that. And it's like really like just giving ourselves permission to be, and not be in spite of that. And I do think that forgiveness, it is my belief that, and you wrote it here too, my belief that forgiveness is the most powerful transformational agent. And it's like, I left my dream passionate career working with young moms to build this practice because of that forgiveness that I gave myself back in 2012. And I just go, like, when you talk about forgiveness, I call this miracle energy. I call it miracle energy 100%. Right?
Okay, I love every word that comes out of your mouth, but that miracle energy.
Yes. Right. And I just think like, that's like the choice to do the work. And I don't know. Sometimes leading up to podcasts, I get these like downloads of intuition, or I'll see a post and I'm like, oh, cool. But I remember just seeing a post maybe a few hours ago, and it said, if we want to teach our children how to have tough conversations, or how to keep that communication open, it is about sharing our journey, because they want to know that they're not wrong, or they're not alone. And that's also the message in motherhood too, that you're not alone in this. Right. No. And that the more that we can talk about this and open up that communication, it really starts to break down those barriers that keep us in, I call it this box of shame. Because Brené Brown, she says that shame can only exist in the petri dish. So my intention is we need to talk about it.
And you have no idea who's listening to yourself being open, and you have just given that other mother or that other woman or that other person permission to also open up.
Yes.
So it's for you, but it's for the women around you. And, I love that I've given myself permission to talk about this story, but I was telling you that last night I had a conversation with the girls, because I'm not vocal with this, and I'm very careful at protecting their father, because, he deserves to see himself in a new way too. And he deserves, compassion, and for me to speak about him for a purpose. And so I really wanted to talk to the girls last night about, I'm going to share this part of things, and I'm going to make sure that I'm respectful to your father. And we were talking about it, and Jade said, yeah, you know what, mommy, you deserve to tell your story just like it is. I was like, oh,
yes, girl.
Permission for myself, but they're only so proud. Like they're my biggest supporters. Like,
totally.
Yeah, anytime I'm like, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing this," they're like, "You'll do great." And they're just, like, always supportive, and I hope they feel that in me. I think they do, so
Absolutely. Well, our listeners are going to hear this, and I feel like they're going to hear the love coming from you. And eventually, we'll share the video too, and they will see it. But the love that's coming from you, and just the level of realness around how you got here, I do think that you and I share a lot of similar values, and I really appreciate you going into it, because so many of us have these parts of our stories, and
Yeah.
with the way that we've been brought up, we can kind of put it into a box and make it feel as though there's something wrong with us, or that we didn't do it right.
Right.
And I really am on this mission to break it down, because it's so not.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that is, like, one message that I wanna leave is because I never gave myself permission to really feel like a true mother, I really hid from other moms. I
Mm,
really separated myself, and
mm,
it's been a pattern where a lot of my friends don't have kids. Like, I haven't been around mothers. I've shied away from other mothers that are in, like, the kids' class, and just never feeling comfortable around mothers, but, oh,
mm,
that is one thing that, like, I
mm.
wish I had surrounded myself with mothers, and I wish that we would have had open conversations about motherhood and about that stuff. And I'm grateful that I can have that now. So I love this podcast because there's someone who um, might not have the courage to speak to other mothers, but they're gonna see that, they're a podcast listener and they see this motherhood podcast and they can listen to us share our stories and they can
Yes.
start sharing theirs. So thank you so much for putting this together. I
Yes.
absolutely love your mission.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know that you're going to be back, because there's so much more to talk about. So
Yeah.
thank you. And I'm just sending you so much love, and thank you for bringing us into your world, and for bringing your light into ours. And just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank
My pleasure.
you.